Hi, it's Evan, Mr. Tapley here to talk you through the Semester 2 History CAT, looking at ancient Greece and ancient China, completing a source analysis activity. So in this video, I'll be going over some revision tips, providing you with a little checklist, talking about the structure, the requirements for the CAT, and the timeline for when we are completing our assessment. So our learning intention for this video, and for this lesson, is to review and revise the key skills and knowledge needed to prepare for the Semester 2 CAT. Success criteria is to identify the key revision topics that we'll be looking at for our studies and preparing for the CAT, manage your class time effectively, and of course always ask questions to effectively study for our CAT in week 9 of term 3. So, the CAT follows the same structure as the Ancient Australia Dev task, which I will show you shortly for those of you that have forgotten. But you're looking at a visual source, so a primary or secondary source that is a picture or an image or a physical artifact. And then you are looking at a text source that is probably connected to that source. So some sort of written description or summary or overview or background knowledge about that artifact. And then you'll be asked a series of questions evaluating your knowledge of ancient history and your source analysis skills. The CAT will be completed via Google Docs, submitted in Google Classroom. So the exact same procedure as the dev task. Didn't want to introduce anything new to confuse you guys and overcomplicate things. So it's the same structure as the dev task, same location, same method of submitting it and completing it. It's about the same timeline as well. It's a few more questions than the dev, but it's 40 to 50 minutes. So you have the full lesson to complete the assessment. There's going to be 8 questions, and it's worth 20 marks in total. The assessment will appear in Google Classroom about 5 or 10 minutes before the scheduled lesson, so don't freak out if you get there the morning of your CAT and your CAT is in period 5 and you can't see it in Google Classroom. It's only going to show up a few minutes beforehand, so you have one lesson to complete it, not one full school day. And then submissions will close 5 or 10 minutes after our lesson, just to give you guys a few minutes to play around with technical difficulties. I've had bad internet today, it happens. But if you do suffer any problems when trying to submit that CAT, or you think you require additional time, or you have questions about specific questions in the CAT, again, all you have to do is email me, and I'll be happy to help to the best of my ability. So, similar to your economics CAT, where we had different sections or parts of the CAT, instead of giving you one massive assessment that was 50 questions long, what we've done with this CAT is we've cut it in half. So there are 2 parts to your history CAT, and they will be completed across 2 lessons. So CAT 1 will be looking at ancient Greece, and for 7G4, you'll be completing that on Wednesday. 7F3, you'll be completing that in period 4 on Thursday. The second part of your CAT will be looking at ancient China. So you'll be looking at what we've just looked at in our history unit in term 3. And 7G4, you'll be completing that on Friday. 7F3, you'll be completing that in the second half of our split double. So you'll have part 1, lunch, recharge the batteries, recover, and then part 2, your ancient China CAT, will be in Thursday's period 5 class. Now, just like there is 2 lessons to complete the CAT, you're going to be given 2 revision lessons to study before the CAT. So we finish our ancient history unit in week 8, and then we'll be starting our CAT in week 9. So you'll have 2 lessons before those 2 assessment dates that were on the previous slide. It's not entirely mandatory, but my advice to you, my recommendation, is that you spend one of those lessons looking at ancient Greece and one lesson looking at ancient China. So the CAT isn't going to have anything on ancient Australia. It will be using the same skills that we've used in the ancient Australia dev. So source analysis, those sort of questions, you will see them on the CAT. But you're not going to be asked about Indigenous Australians in either of those 2 CATs. So one lesson for Greece, one lesson for China. To support your studies, instead of just throwing the textbook at you and expecting you to study the whole thing, a revision checklist is provided on the next slide. It is recommended you create your own personal notes by summarizing key topics and defining key terms to study for the CAT. The best way to learn something is to learn it yourself, to look at the information in the textbook or the slides or in videos or support resources or worksheets, whatever it is, and then create that information yourself, to summarize the information in your own words, because that way you are looking at it in different stages. You're absorbing the information when you read it, when you watch it. You're absorbing the information when you think about it, and try and put it into your own words. And then you're again having another stage of learning when you write down that information yourself. So we encourage you to create your own personal notes to study for the CAT. In the dev task, you guys have the opportunity to create a summary sheet of notes, cheat sheet, whatever you want to call it. That won't be the case for the CAT, but I recommend you do something similar to that when you are studying. That's a good way of preparing and revising for your CAT. So you might spend one lesson looking at ancient Greece, one at ancient China, and then before you have your CAT, you'll have one piece of paper in front of you that you can study instead of going through all of the notes and all the textbook slides and everything like that. So it's a good revision resource, and it's a good way to relearn the content that you might not remember from ancient Greece. It's also important to note that we do have a set chapter for Greece, and we have one for China. Chapter 1, the first chapter in our textbook, looks at key historical skills. So chapter 1 talks about the difference between a primary and a secondary source. So if you're looking for more information about source analysis skills, chapter 1 is your friend. And of course, the dev is obviously an excellent resource for revising, for studying for this CAT, looking at the feedback on the dev. So what did I do well? I need to make sure I do that in the CAT. What did I need to improve on in the dev? I'm going to make sure I study that extra hard before my CAT. So go and have a look at the dev feedback on Compass and in Google Classroom. And if you have questions about that, please ask me. Now, as I said, the CAT will be closed book, so you don't have a cheat sheet, you don't have your textbook or your slides in front of you when you're completing the CAT. It's a good revision tool, but you will not be completing the CAT with any support resources during the lesson. It's under test conditions, effectively. I can't come and look at you in your house and see if you're completing the test under test conditions. However, to make sure that you guys do not have your textbook or your slides open during the CAT, Google Classroom has a little feature called plagiarism check. So plagiarism is copying or cheating. And for this assignment, what Mr. Tapley will do, if he has to, is just tick the little box. If I look at someone's answer or someone's CAT, and I think, that sounds a bit, I've learned how they sound and how they write over the past 12 months. That doesn't seem like their own words. It seems like that's been copied and pasted from somewhere. I just need to click a little box, and then Google will tell me throughout its entire catalog of search histories of millions of results where that information has come from. So it's important you use your own words because you don't want to lose marks. You don't want to be penalized if you have copied your response from a website or a video or another student as well. So please complete the CAT closed book because I don't want to be the bad guy or the supervillain of the story and remove marks for people who have plagiarized their work. It has happened in the past. I'm hoping it won't happen again. Now, what we're all here for, the checklist. So this is your revision checklist for both Greece and ancient China. And you can see next to each of those key topics that you're going to be looking at to study for the CAT, I've put the class slides where you can go and find that information. And I've also put the relevant textbook chapter when it is appropriate. You should also have information in your notebook, whether it's a written notebook or your personal notes. We've completed learning tasks, little worksheets throughout the term that are related to these topics. So go and have a look at your own student notes when you are preparing for the CAT, when you are completing revision topics in this checklist. Because it's very possible that if you've been taking notes effectively throughout the term, you've already done half of your study. All your notes are there ready to go. I know a number of students who have been taking excellent notes throughout the term, and they're going to have a much smoother time studying for this CAT. So in ancient Greece, the key topics to look at are city-states, and I've put these in chronological order. So they're in order of when we looked at them first. So one of the first topics we looked at was city-states. After that was Olympic Games, etc., etc. So the first topic for ancient Greece is city-states. So that's looking at the power in ancient Greece, the way that the nation or the civilization of ancient Greece was divided into very separate individual city-states. So that was when we were looking at Athens and Sparta. So that's what you're looking at for chapter 5.6 and 5.7. So tell me about the city-states. Why did they form? How were they different? How were they similar? And if you know a few names, e.g. Athens and Sparta, then that would be good for this dot point here. Olympic Games. Very relevant, given it's 2020. We have the Olympic Games, or 2021. Those are in class slides 76 to 78, and the textbook is chapter 5.9. So for that dot point there, you're looking at what were the Olympic Games, why were they first held, and maybe what were some of the events, or what were some of the rewards for the Olympic Games for the athletes who competed, who won. Mythology and religion. So that was looking at ancient Greek gods and goddesses. That was hard to say. So we had a nice big list of the gods and goddesses in ancient Greece. So if you can name a few of those names, if you can tell me what they did, why they were important, similar to ancient Australia where we looked at the spiritual beliefs and the religion of the Indigenous Australians, it's important to know why religion and mythology was important to the ancient Greeks. Then finally, historical conservation. So that's looking at conservation, whether we should save, whether we should preserve or protect ancient artifacts, primary sources from ancient Greece, why it's important to do that, and how we can do that effectively. So in ancient Australia, we looked at Mungo Man, we looked at Uluru. In ancient Greece, we looked at the Parthenon marbles, the Elgin marbles. So that was our conservation topic, which is in that class slide section there. So you're talking to me about a key skill that we looked at in ancient Australia, and you have feedback on it in your dev task, which I should probably show you at some point. Here it is. Oh, I've chopped off half my head. That's embarrassing. But this is your dev task. So again, it's going to be very similar structure to the cat. That's distracting me. There I am. So you've got a primary source, a secondary source, a visual and a text source. You've got some questions about the source itself. You've got questions about demonstrating your understanding of that particular period of history. So about ancient Australia, what can you tell me? Questions about historical accuracy and reliability. Questions about the significance, the importance of this. And then that's our conservation question that we looked at in ancient Australia. So if you're struggling with that dot point in our revision checklist, go back and have a look at what you wrote for question 8. And that might give you some ideas of where to improve. Cool. Ancient China. This was the most recent stuff that we've been looking at, so hopefully it's still stuck in your head. Whereas with ancient Greece, you might need to do a bit of revision on what the hell we were doing in ancient Greece. So ancient China, social hierarchy. So that's the different levels or tiers in the ancient Chinese society. So you have the emperor at the top, obviously, the most important person. Who is he? Why was he important? What did he do? And then you work your way down, looking at the peasants and the merchants and slaves and servants. So that's in chapter 7.4. Some of this information that I'm giving you in terms of the slides and textbook, you may remember, some of it might be new, but it's good to always revise this stuff. The more we look at it, the more likely chance you will have of remembering it and understanding it during the CAT. The Qin dynasty was the period of history that we looked at in the greatest detail in ancient China during our history unit. That's in class slides 106 to 110 and textbook chapter 7.8. So you're looking at the first emperor of China, Qin Shi Huang. I apologize for mispronouncing that horribly, I assume. You're looking at who was the first emperor of China, the first emperor of the Qin dynasty. What did he do? Why was he so significant? What was his legacy after he was gone? So what did he achieve? What did he accomplish? So the Great Wall, the Terracotta Army, the changes he made to ancient Chinese society. So he's done quite a lot of things, and it's all located in chapter 7.8 in those class slides. Burial practices. So that's looking at the ancient Chinese burial, funeral practices. What were their beliefs of the afterlife, of the spiritual realm after death? And that's, again, related to examples of that in real world. So textbook chapter 7.5, it talks about how they looked at possessions that the dead people could bring into the next life. So the Terracotta Army is a good example of that. The emperor created that entire army of soldiers to accompany him into the next life, to protect him from all the bad stuff that was going to happen in the next life. So basically their beliefs of what happens to you after you die and how the dead would be honored in these funerals and these burials. So the mausoleum of the first emperor, the first Qin emperor, would be a good example to look at for that one. The mausoleum's a fancy word for tomb or graveyard, essentially. And then finally, historical conservation, class slides 113 and 115. We looked at the Great Wall of China for that topic. So again, similar skills that you're looking at in Greece, in China, and in Australia. Oh, I'm running out of breath. So that's all I've got to say, I believe. We've gone over the revision checklist. We've reminded you what the dev looks like, because it's very similar to the CAT structure. The final thing I will show you, so this is 7G4, just to show you what it will look like in Google Classroom when your CAT pops up. You can see part 1 there is going to appear on September 8th for 7G4, not 7F3, and then part 2 will pop up at that specific time on that day. So again, don't stress if it doesn't show up in Google Classroom the start of your day. It's going to show up there a few minutes before your scheduled class. Any questions or concerns about that, guys, please let me know. I'm always happy to help you out if you let me. just let me know this problem and I'll see what I can do to help you, whether that's additional support, resources, explanation of the cat structure or dev feedback, or if you think you need an extension. Yeah, that's all I've got to say. Hope you guys are well. Hope remote learning is going okay or as good as it can go. Yeah, thank you for listening. Cheers.